Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Alina. Thank you to the Coco team. And thanks everyone who came out. I'm hoping this will be an interactive session where we can talk to each other and not just me lecturing. So please don't be shy. And yeah, my goal for tonight. Alina asked, what is my goal for tonight? And I basically just said that part of it is maybe some catharsis. Um, because of the way things have been going in a way for Agile. Part of it is to just maybe ignite some more joy in terms of what we're doing with agility and share together in terms of our thinking about what's happening. And on that, I want to share a few personal stories about agility in my life because I'm always kind of struggling to be more and more agile, and there's areas where I can get better, and sometimes those are, challenging when you aren't as agile as you'd like to be. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and maybe you'll be able to share some of your own stories in that regard. We'll see. Um, any questions before I start? Okay, let me. I'm going to show a couple slides, but along the way we'll stop and talk, of course. So let me share this keynote presentation here. I will go into my mode. Okay. So, you know, I thought I'd call this bookend or beginning. Um, and part of that's because so many people are talking about the death of Agile. And, I don't think that that is where we're at. I think we're really more at a new beginning. So, I want to talk about that. Uh, so let's start off here. Capital One basically eliminated 1,100 agile positions in January 2020. That was a bit shocking to the agile community. It's a massive layoff, and I knew people that were part of it. Did anyone else here know people that were part of that? Yep. hmm and sometimes when things like this happen, other companies follow suit. They start to think they need to do the same thing. And so I think we did start to see a wave of more and more agile positions being let go. And, it was pretty hard for the agile community to deal with this. And I think there's been a lot of change afoot because of this. Um, so that is a reality. And people have different interpretations about what happened at Capital One. People that worked there, people that thought it was a success that they got rid of those folks, people that thought it was not a success. I mean, there's different perspectives on what happened. But it did happen. So that's a fact. And, it led to a lot of this. It's wonderful having, Chat GPT. You can just ask it, make an image for me. And the thing about it is just, I'm you may not know this, but I have three daughters, and in many ways, I'm very supportive of women, and you might even call myself a feminist or something like that. Because I asked ChatGPT to make an image, and it's like all men. Maybe there's one woman in the image, so I have to constantly tell it to make diversity happen in the images it draws. So that has nothing to do with my talk, but I just find it interesting that by default, it does not produce very diverse, images. So anyhow, I like,
Fascinating.
what's that?
Fascinating. Yeah.
It is fascinating. It's a little sad, but it's you can get it to produce what you want. You just have to prompt it correctly. Um, so there is a lot of talk of Agile being dead, and I have said plenty of times on LinkedIn that's all nonsense. Don't even talk about, it, don't think about it. It's not a thing. But I think that there is. I think that's almost the wrong approach is to just dismiss it all because there is a change afoot, right? Something has changed. And just to dismiss the people that are saying Agile's dead is seems off to me. Um, I'm curious to hear what you think. I'll just finish by saying here that um, change is afoot, right? There's change is inevitable, and I mean the date on this is comical, right? I mean because I didn't even ask it to put a date, but it probably went from the Agile Manifesto, which was signed in 2001 by a bunch of men, and it started with that date. I think that date is ridiculous, right? I think Agile's been around forever, and so we'll be talking about that because I think that what I find joyful is getting out of these more narrow-minded definitions of Agile. And I think we've been living with a very narrow perspective of Agile for far too long. And we need to expand our concept of Agile and of agility. That's what I tried to do in my book, Joy of Agility. And it's still important to me to see Agile in this more broader way, not just Agile software development. But how about you? What do you think about everyone saying Agile is dead? I'm curious to hear some thoughts.
I guess one way to look at it is the art is in the eye of the beholder, and if that's what it's perceived, that's what it is. But at the same time, as you mentioned, 2001 is an interesting date, yet agility was spoken about before, yet it was just utilized in different framework or different meaning. Same thing with, is it dead or alive, or is it a fad and it's emerging into something at the next evolution?
Right, right. Yep. So the date itself of 2001 is kind of absurd, and maybe we're witnessing a new evolution here. Yes.
And then what comes to me is that at the ever increasing rate of big change, where any prediction is that the degree of change, the directional change, the scale of the change is actually ever increasing. All the skills and ways of reflecting on how work is getting accomplished is becoming more valuable, not less.
Mhm.
Now, I ran into a very interesting series by Lisa Atkins, who was sort of asking, like, what is what are companies actually rejecting when they fire 1,000 people? I mean, do they want to go back to waterfall? No, that's not. I don't think that's what Capital One was advocating. They weren't killing agile. They were just, yeah, I don't know, cost savings and the rest of it. But sort of in her exploration, the absurdity of the certification mill, the whole industrial complex around agile. Um, the weird monsters called safe in various numbers iterations. Um, Something about that trajectory is not actually that useful.
Yes.
Therefore, yeah, why are we spending money on this?
Right. Yeah, I love that. And anyone else want to comment on this theme of death of Agile?
Well, I was reading the State of Agile report on InfoQ. And what they say is that, Agile is great and there is nothing wrong with Agile. The problems always comes from the attempt to scale it, because when you scale something in a prescriptive manner, it goes against the nature and the soul of Agile, right? When we go into the war of the frameworks, what is the prescribed way for everyone in this large company? Like that's where the Agile and agility kind of breaks, because you cannot prescribe one thing to everyone. Like what happens to, the learn in a moment approach, right? And do the small experiments and see the value at the end of each sprint. When you prescribe the large, here's you go plan for everyone for the next 5 years. So I
Yeah.
thought that was kind of interesting as well.
Yes. So this crazy fixation with scaling, that's been a problem for maybe 10 years now.
Mm.
Hmm. Yeah. And as Volker was saying, how Lisa Atkins observed, Capital One is not trying to be less agile, right? I mean, there's something else at the
Well,
root.
this wasn't it. At least I didn't make that connection. I
Oh,
just made
okay,
that
so
connection
Volker,
here.
you
But
made that
still, I
right.
mean, to whatever company X, yeah. I mean, the rate of change that they need to adapt to
Mhm.
hasn't slowed down. So this is not a choice variable.
Exactly, exactly.
I found it interesting that you describe it as the fixation for scaling. Because my experience working inside actually two companies trying to introduce agile and get people to adopt, or they actually some of them actually want to, is we got stuck at some level, at some management level. They don't want it. I mean, they're actually fixated in the old way of managing. So to me, my personal experience is scaling is necessary, but I personally have never been successful in scaling it, in moving it up. It
Mhm.
stopped at some place, is at some level. And right now the safe thing is really, I think it's actually, see, I think perhaps one reason they are successful is they it's just the mindset of upper management is they want to they want the what do you call that? They don't want to change how they do things, but they want something new.
Yeah. That's a tall order, isn't it?
Um, I, Hi, I'm Dana. I'm from Southern Wisconsin. I came to a couple of your meetings in the past, so I just want to chime in here. I'm taking a lean certification at a local community college, and it's really interesting. I mean, you just replace lean and put agile in, put agile, put a lean in. And so there's a lot of similarities in manufacturing when they're doing a lean transformation and doing an agile transformation. And they go through that whole thing about cultural change. We do a little bit at a time. Some want to do a faster lean transformation. And the interesting thing is, and I can't put my finger on it, but in manufacturing, we're like, well, we don't need quality engineers anymore. We don't need lean leaders anymore. They don't wipe them out, you know? But it's taught in the university levels. It's expected for engineers to pick up some type of lean manufacturing. I see it and maybe you guys, I mean, I've been a Scrum Master for 8 years now, and I've seen if there is any schooling that comes out about Agile. Um, it's it's kind of at the technical level. The big universities really don't do it because when I've worked with interns and recent college graduates and onboarding them to the team, that's just what I'm noticing. So that's one thing that I'm noticing between like a lean transformation and the agile transformation. Um, Leadership, right? That lean leadership thinking or kata. I'm taking a class right now on this all right now. And it's they go through the same challenges, but again, they just don't wipe out their whole lean work, right? The process improvement. And I think it kind of goes back to taking that scientific of approach of driving improvements. And I think agility and various different consultants and frameworks kind of lost that way of working so that when leaderships can see what they're doing, they're not getting their pretty graphs anymore about the of changing, like what they would do in project management. I used to work in a PMO office, and so I used to do a lot of reporting and status reporting and report that up to my CIO. He used to always run to my desk. I need this, 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 and I would be able to show them what's going on the enterprise project portfolio level, what was going on with the projects. And so I don't know. I'm just some things that I'm seeing that maybe they're missing from some of the practices from a PMO and a project management and that thing that they're not getting. Well, it takes time to do a cultural change. How do you measure that and show them that they're still making progress? You know, I don't know. I'm just kind of I don't have an answer, but it's just something that I'm doing that I've the class taking these classes have forced me to reflect on the differences between a lean transformation and an agile transformation. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, that's great. That's fascinating. I mean, I think for me, I love lean. I love the concepts of lean. They have thoroughly changed the way I approach agility. The concepts in lean. So it's to me, it's if you're an agilist and you're not studying lean, you're probably missing out on quite a bit of wonderful stuff. So
Well, yeah, and that's what I took this course through these courses to get the certification to see how they actually do it. I worked in manufacturing. I had a little exposure to Six Sigma, in the past. But this is it's just been really eye-opening. And because the class is engaging, right? You got instructors who've been out there doing this in the real world, and then you got the students bringing it in. Um, it just brings a different, you know, it's not, a different perspective of what's going on in IT and you know why are they letting go and you know so many agile coaches and scrum masters and that so anyway.
interesting. Well, yeah. So this concept of agile being dead, I think, like I said, don't think it's good to totally dismiss it, um, because definitely there's been some change. There's been some rejection of agile positions, agile coaches, scrum masters, there are a lot of people on the market now looking for work who were doing that work before. And we can't say exactly what reason, it is that they are all on the market, but there is a change afoot. And it sometimes feels painful to maybe the people in the agile community. And we have to acknowledge that. We can't just say this is ridiculous. Agile's alive and well. I think to me, what I could say is this. I'm a huge tennis nut. Okay, so I often bring tennis into my thinking, but into my talk. So you'll have to pardon me because most of you probably don't play tennis. You probably don't watch tennis. You probably don't care about tennis. But that doesn't really matter to the subject here because what I'm about to say is this. There's a guy named Novak Djokovic who's number one in the world. He's about 37 years old. He's won more Grand Slam tournaments than any other tennis player of all time. And there's a young kid who is from Northern Europe. I think he's from either Norway or I can't remember exactly where he's from, but no, he's Danish. He's Danish. Okay, so he's Danish. His name is Holger Rune. He's about 19 years old. And the other, a year or so ago or whatever it was, he lost to someone and he played really hard, but he lost. and he was pretty upset. But his coach is a guy named Patrick Mouratoglou, who was Serena Williams' coach. You probably heard of Serena Williams. And he said, I love these moments when a player like Holger loses and is beaten up, because that's when change can happen. That's when he might listen more carefully to what I'm talking about, and we can really make a big change in his game. Those are the special moments when when a real change can occur. It has to be those losses when the change can really occur. And so the coach was excited. And there's a show on Netflix called Break Point, which is all about these tennis players and gets into some of the details. But I think we're in a similar situation with Agile. I think that what people are calling the death of Agile is actually not a death at all. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to move on and maybe start to get more wise about agility. It's a chance for us to reflect on the past and then invent a new future. It's a beginning. To me, it's actually a celebration. We have come to a point now where we can begin to get happy about the next phase or next life of agility beyond what we last saw in the last 20 to 30 years. I believe agility, we're on a multi-decade journey for sure, but it may be multi-century journey, right? We're talking centuries here. We're not talking decades. We're in the early days of agility, of a real awareness of agility. So there's no death of agility. There may be a death of, roles that weren't providing enough value. Obviously people have a lot of problems with the cheap certifications. That has been a problem and it continues to be a problem. And that has led to a marketplace filled with people that don't necessarily have a lot of, experience, which has given Agile a bad name. But there's plenty of reasons why Agile's gotten a bad name, and it's not just that. But the point I like to think about is that it's a beginning. We're only a couple of decades into this. If you are going to mark time from 2001, I don't think that's even accurate. But we're still in the early days, even if you could pinpoint this as starting in the 90s. We're still in the early days of agility. The people in this call are the future leaders of agility. You can be those leaders. You don't have to think of this as being, you're coming late to the party. I don't believe that's the case. I don't believe anything like SAFe is going to be around in 5 to 10 years. Or maybe it will be, but it will be, it'll be over. So I'm not too worried about that. What I find is that there are many misperceptions about agility. Many, many, many misperceptions. And let's go over a few. First of all, young people think Agile is for old people, right? There's a lot of, I've heard this, seen it. They are now convinced, all these people with gray hair talking about Agile, but young folks don't talk about it. Old people, really old people, are like, we did this long before you called it Agile. So why are you using the term? Entrepreneurs will say we prefer lean startup. Product people are like, Agile? We don't do Agile. We're product driven. We're creating product driven organizations, product operations. We don't talk about that Agile junk. Programmers, please let us just code, okay? Stop making us do all these rituals and meetings. We have designers. Oh, I don't do Agile. I do design thinking. Executives, we're playing it safe. Ha ha ha. Managers, Agile, yes, we sprint, and our PMs are now certified Scrum Masters. Okay, that's awesome. Certifiers, be Agile, get certified, right? The quest to certify more and more people. And then tool vendors, be agile, buy our tool, right? We see a lot of that crazy devotion to tools, and it's not very helpful. A lot of times those tools lock you in to a way of working that may not be very agile for you. Um, Not to say all tools are bad. You know, if used wisely, they can be helpful. But a lot of tools do tend to, you know, make it a little harder to make changes happen. I don't think this is agile. A lot of people have come to think that this is what agile means. And it's really just, you know, a method. It's a way of working. I think if people really read some of the literature that's been written, they will understand a little more about how this even came to be. Jeff Sutherland's own book with the horrible title, you know, twice the work in half the time. He says, you know, the concept of the sprint came about because a educational institution wanted to, you know, decide every 2 weeks or so whether they should keep funding the effort. It was based upon a funding model and not upon anything else. The sprint was based upon should we keep funding this research project? So you could literally have a funding cadence and not have a sprint, and you'd be doing what they were doing there. Scrum has come to symbolize agile, and I don't think that's right, and I don't think it's fair. And I think it's something that's part of the olden days of agile that we need to move on from. Agile is not the certified ability to sprint, estimate with story points, and attend stand-up meetings. Right? Mixed scrums is not not my concept of agility. Agile is also not this enterprise agile framework stuff you see, right? All of these treat agile as a noun. And we're going to talk about this. A lot of people think of agile as a noun, as a thing. I want to introduce agile to the organization, right? You could say, I want to introduce vegetables to my family. I want to introduce agile to the organization. That's a noun. You're treating agile as a noun when you say that. It's not a noun. Okay? These methods that people come up with are methods. You could think of those as nouns, but agile is not a noun. And a lot of us, I'll say this, right? Agile's not a noun. I guarantee you're still thinking of it as a noun. I guarantee you're still thinking of it as a method, as a way of working, a set of practices and principles that is influencing your thinking. And I had to basically spend a lot of time to turn away from that and really see agile as something completely different and not a noun. We'll get to that in a minute. Any thoughts on that? I want to pause every now and then and give you all a chance to, you know, reflect on this concept of agility as noun. To me, is something we need to be careful about.
Seems to me we could step back even, you know, one step further back. What is Agile for? What are we trying to get out of it? Why do it?
Absolutely. Why do it? Yes. And so I have an answer to that. Does anyone have their specific answer? Why would we endeavor to be agile? What's the
I think
benefit?
it's like I think it's like a drug that can have many syndications. It could be intended with one point of view, and then it pivots because an emergent has evolved to having more benefits, right? You could start with flattening the organization to removing how decisions are made at the top to bringing it down, or it could be because you are looking to speed things up and actually understand what value is being delivered instead of go through the motion. I'm the manager, so therefore I bring value. My calendar is filled, and I'm going to chop somebody's out of this week, and I'm going to plan to chop somebody's out of next week. Right? There's lots of flavors to pick from.
Yes.
I mean, what got me hooked on Agile was self-organization as a way of achieving better results, have more fun. The decisions are being made with the people who actually have firsthand knowledge and not just look at reports. The emergent problem solving that is happening every day, where we can deal with complexity and changing discoveries or circumstances or new information in more real time, and therefore being more satisfied with the results. It's not just, we met the requirements document and nobody wants the product. um, and I think there's somewhere implicit, and I'm still struggling to name that, a very different concept of what it means to be a worker bee. Craftsmanship, quality, the human thing, the relationship thing. These are all sort of, I don't know, implicitly hidden all around these agile, yeah, ceremonies and ways of trying to make sense of the world, that are hugely important, both for satisfaction and the quality and the engagement, and and we don't want to talk about it because it's, you know, not about the value created, but it's so critical to creating customer value. Um, and so there's something around that in terms of the quality of collaboration that we try to bake into methodologies and frameworks. That wants me to show up for work in the morning, other than a paycheck.
When I read with the Agile lens, the book by Daniel Pink called Drive, and he talked about 3 things to motivate people or to drive people, and they are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. In the Agile world, I start with purpose. If Agile supports the idea of setting goals, giving people a purpose, having them understand what's important, who needs what and why do they need it, kind of a thing. And if they have a purpose, that's a major component of what Agile can provide to a company. Mastery indicates that you're at a certain level as an individual, a team, a program, a company, of knowledge, skill, and so forth. And if you promote mastery, meaning a learning environment, then that's something also that is kind of complementary to the Agile framework. And then autonomy. If people have purpose and they have the desire to become masters at what they do, they can become autonomous. They as individuals, teams, again, and programs, can have that level of autonomy that doesn't need to be controlled by anyone. And I think that's what, Agile gives and can promote to a company. Now, how it's presented and how it works is another thing. But, it's the Agile mindset is what I think may be missing in today's world. When you talk about a certificate factory and people coming into the Agile world just executing Agile without understanding the Agile mindset, there's a lot lost there, and you lose a lot of people along the way.
So if you say
I
executing Agile,
love that book. And that is actually one of the books that changed my career. I mean, I started off a lot with traditional project management, project management offices, working for portfolio managers, etc. And at times it was getting frustrating. There was a lot of constraints, there was a lot of waste. And I read that book, and that is when I started to think differently and start moving to be an agilist. I have worked in very fast companies, and I've worked in very complex 85-year-old organizations where something like SAFE, it's slow, but it's more practical for that type of structure where you can't just take down a hierarchy in 1 year. It's going to take some time. But then at the same time, I have worked for startups. So I think a lot of it is the purpose that you mentioned. I like to do purposeful work myself. So if I believe in the company, I'm going to try what I can to do its best using different lean or agile ways.
So that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I have this theory though that everyone here would like to work in a wonderful environment. Everyone here would love to enjoy and be joyful at work, right? We all want to enjoy our work. Self-organization, purpose, mastery, autonomy, psychological safety. We can use all kinds of words. And we're all looking for the same thing. We're all looking for a great outcome. We're looking for a fantastic environment where we produce tremendous value. I think that everyone has a different definition of agile. I don't think anyone shares a definition of agile. I do think that's a problem. And I think that it leads to too much confusion. There's too many words. There's too many good things. We could say, well, meditation's good, and peace is good, love is good, everything, all these good things. We want them all. But is that agile? No. If I ask a team, listen, I'd like you to create blackjack for me. I'd like you to write the software for blackjack. And I'm going to give you all the autonomy in the world. And the purpose is that, we want to be able to support blackjack for our customers. That's the purpose of I'm handing you the purpose, but it's your thing to take. Let's just say you have autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Now, mastery, we're going to have to be a little bit clearer about. But after 6 months, you still don't have a blackjack game. That's low. Well, and everyone on the team would say, no, we've all read Daniel Pink's book and we have autonomy, mastery, and purpose here. We genuinely have it. But it's 6 months and we got no game. Are you agile? I'm curious what you think.
So in the corporate world, no, you're not agile. But I would say that for me, it was just more of a mind shift change, right? To think that way and to be hopeful that I could have that type of impact. And then furthermore, hopefully be working for a company that I truly believed in the mission and values and purpose, right? So that type of alignment. So otherwise, what you're going to spend 40 hours or plus a week, in an organization, you've got to have something that you're connected to. And all of us are obviously people oriented, and team oriented. So, just try to bring what you can. I agree with you. For some environments, meditation is good. Other environments, could be more social, partying, whatever. It just really depends. But I think that's the human aspect of who are you working with, and what is acceptable culturally in that organization, and how do we all connect as human beings as we work together.
Great. Yeah, Dana had her hand up.
Yeah, I want to take a different perspective. Again, I'm not trying to say that lean is like perfect, but just from my studies and reading that I've been doing, in agility, there's different ways. You got Scrum, you got Kanban, you got XP, you got Crystal, you got, the list goes on. Then you got the scaling frameworks, and you got consultants who do things all their own different way. You got tools, backlog tools that all do things a little bit differently and called fields differently. Or is it a story point? Is it an effort, right? So you got all these little um, uh, different ways to execute and how to do agility. And I'm going to speak from a software development perspective, but in manufacturing, if you're looking at Six Sigma and you look at lean, particularly lean, there's two places you go. You go to the Lean Institute, where in Scrum, you got scrum.org, you got Scrum Alliance, and there's probably other ones out there that you can look at. And then if there's disagreements on that, you go to the Toyota production system, which is tried and tested. It's based on, well, back then it was called the Department of War of standardizing work and doing training. That's the foundation of the Toyota production system and how they do things. And so there isn't this much of and maybe it's the nature of manufacturing, right? If you're making a piece and it comes down through the production line, sure, you can change that scope and redesign it and all that. But when you're taking that same concept and developing code, they can pivot and change much more faster. And so I think that's also been another challenge that I've been seeing why agility is failing, because there's just so many different ways to do it too. So I'm just coming with a different perspective and just kind of throwing that out there.
Great stuff. So I guess I want to get back to like a little bit of this fact that none of us share a common definition of the word agile. That is a fact, and I've asked so many people what their definition is, and it's all over the map. We don't share a definition of this thing. We do tend to share, I think, aspirations for what we want the workplace to be like. I think there's a lot of commonalities there, but I think it's different in terms of what Agile is. And again, even on this phone call or this Zoom call, I'm hearing lots of uses of the word Agile as a noun. It's deeply embedded in your psyche, okay? It really, truly is. You're thinking Agile methods, introduce Agile into my organization. And I'm going to suggest that the next evolution of Agile is beyond Agile as a noun. It is not Agile as a noun. Now, what is it instead? Let's go back to the presentation for a minute, and we'll go a little further here. So, okay, so of course, Agile is not this Agile enterprise Agile framework. It's also not this. It's not, the scaled Agile. I'm the Lizard King. I can do anything. It's actually not even this manifesto for Agile software development. It's not that either. Wonderful document, wonderful thing, but I don't believe that's Agile either. That's the concept of maybe Agile for software development, but it's not what the word Agile means. Now, by the way, if you go back to the early 1990s, you would find the Agility Forum. And this was in the manufacturing context, and it was in specifically a group that came together from many industries, many of which were hardware, automobile manufacturers, jet engine creators, airplanes, this and that. And they formed this Agility Forum back in the early 90s. This really existed. And they focused on agility. The focus was on speeding and enhancing the transition of US-based industry to Agile competition. Why was that happening in the early 90s? Because the US got its ass kicked in the 80s by the Japanese, right? And this book then came out in 1994, long before the Agile Manifesto, called Agile Competitors in Virtual Organizations, Strategies and whatever that says, engineering, the customer. And so these four people wrote this book, or these three people wrote this book. It took them 3 or 4 years to write it. There was a foreword by Lee Iacocca of the automobile industry. So they were writing this book over 3 or 4 years, started in the early 1990s. And this guy here, who I think I always called Miguel Beadle before he renamed himself to Mike, but he's Miguel Beadle, and he's one of the signers of the Agile Manifesto. He had been reading this book. he had been reading this book at some point in the late 1990s, maybe early 2000, and was thinking about this when he went to Snowbird and suggested the word agile as a name for the movement. But the point being, agility was around long before this introduction of it into software. So agile, these are a couple of models that I was involved in. The one on the left was one I'm involved in, Modern Agile, which I sort of put together around 2015, 2016. In and around the same time, Alistair Coburn put together the Heart of Agile. And these are more principle focused, formations of Agile. But they're still kind of, in a way, treating Agile as a noun. Modern Agile is just 4 principles. It's a very simplified model. There's not much to it, and you can't get certified in it. And Heart of Agile is very similar, just slightly different words and thinking. So what does Agile mean? In 2011, I was asked to give a keynote speech at an Agile conference, and I put together my speech, and I called it Amplify Your Agility. It was a play on Amplify Your Effectiveness, which was a conference put on by Jerry Weinberg, AYE, and this was, so I called it Amplify Your Agility. And that was the first time in 2011 that I did something I hadn't done really before that in terms of Agile, which was I went to the dictionary to look up what the word means. And I found that Agile is an adjective. And it is in the Merriam-Webster dictionary defined as marked by ready ability to move with quick, easy grace, and having a quick, resourceful, and adaptable character. But this is the definition of this word. It's an adjective. It's one of those 2 different definitions. Pick the one you like, or pick, depending upon the context, one may be better than the other. You could even change it to be marked by ready ability to work with quick, easy grace instead of move with quick, easy grace, right? It'd be the same concept. So this was really something because I hadn't really thought of the word itself. I'd been caught up in the Agile movement and the umbrella of different methods like was mentioned earlier, Scrum, XP, Crystal, and so on. But by 2011, I was starting to get back to like the actual definition of the word itself. And this marked by ready ability to move with quick, easy grace, right? This is a Venn diagram. You kind of need all of those things to be agile. You need to be quick, you need to move with ease and with grace. All 3 need to be present to be agile. Being agile is not so easy. If you only have one, if you're just quick, but you don't move with ease or grace, you are not agile. If you're just graceful, but you're not quick, you're not agile. You need all 3. It's a Venn diagram. Having a quick, resourceful, and adaptable character. Again, a Venn diagram. All 3 are needed to be agile. So going back to what we were talking about, whether it's meditation or better nutrition or better sleep or purpose, autonomy, and mastery, or whatever it is that ultimately gets you to be agile, that's great. That's your formula. That's how you're doing it. But there's a very clear definition of what it means to be agile. How you become agile is totally up to you, right? But being agile means that you are exhibiting the elements of the Venn diagram, whether it's the first definition or the second definition. So in my example of the blackjack team, the team creating blackjack, maybe they didn't have enough mastery of their craft because they hadn't produced blackjack in 6 months. So maybe they were, needing some help on the mastery side. But they were not quick and probably not resourceful and adaptable enough to get the results out faster. They're not agile. I don't care what method they're using. I don't care what books they've read. If they're not quick, adaptable, and resourceful, then they're not agile, period. It's really simple. I would love for the next movement of agile, the next beginning that we're starting here, for us to at least agree on the definition of the very word that we use in our names of our organizations, right? This is the Bay Area Agile Leadership Network, right? The word Agile's in there. How could we have a word in our title that we don't even have a shared definition of? Let me pause there because I spoke a lot. And what do you think?
I mean, you mentioned earlier that in that motivation triad, there's a lot to be said about mastery and defining. And it strikes me that, yeah, for any of those 6 characteristics or criteria, yeah, on the surface, they seem quite clear. And then, as soon as we start picking on them, you'll probably see all the divergence happen quite quickly.
Yes, so I agree because those words alone are not easy. I wrote a whole entire book about that definition. Joy of agility gets into the nuances of those words, what they actually mean. And I illustrate it with tons of stories to try to explain it. There's a story about HP. HP did something where it was quick and easy, but it wasn't graceful at all. And it really hurt them by not being graceful, right? They had 2 of the elements, but not the third. And that led to a very painful result in their printer division. So yes, just because we even have a shared definition doesn't mean we're, smooth sailing. It's understanding those words and what they mean and how we put them all together that becomes so important. But I think if we don't have a shared definition, we're already hurting ourselves. And if we start to think about agility as an adjective, then it becomes something that is not a method. You could look at an executive and say, how are you being agile in your work? It's not, are you implementing Scrum or Kanban or Crystal or XP or SAFe? It's, how are you being agile? How are you being quick, resourceful, and adaptable? How are you being moving with quick, easy grace? That is the thinking that has changed my entire definition, my entire process of thinking about agile, right? So let's go to tennis for one more minute here, because I often find that tennis is teaching me a lot about agility these days. A friend of mine is on my tennis team, and he won a match recently, right? And what happened was this. He won the first set, and he was very happy. It was great. In the second set, he got demolished by his opponent. This is singles. Okay. Now, they decided they were going to play a third set tiebreaker, which means not a third set. It's just you play up to like 10 points. Third set tiebreaker. Okay. So when my friend John got destroyed in the second set, it is demoralizing, right? It's hard on your psyche. You've just been beaten badly by someone. You're not playing well. John goes and sits down next on a bench, right? And he's got maybe a couple of minutes to compose himself and get ready for the tiebreak. What does he do? What John does, and John is one of the best players on the team, is John reflected on what he wasn't doing right, on what was going wrong with his game. And he figured it out as best he could, what he wasn't doing. And then when he went out there to play that tiebreak, he adapted. He adapted rapidly. And he was able to turn it around and win the match by winning the tiebreak. And this is something that, I'm struggling with because I don't play as well as him. And a lot of times I don't adapt as quickly as he does, right? I don't try different things. Novak Djokovic, who's the best player in the world, and has been for many years, he basically said the champions are the ones that adapt the fastest. He's basically saying champions are agile because we just looked at the definition of agile, right? They're quick, resourceful, and adaptable. Djokovic was losing to this Russian player named Daniil Medvedev, who's a top 10 player. He's losing to him, lost the first set. Second set, he comes out, totally different approach. He starts doing serve and volley. It's a different approach. Djokovic has mastery of the game. He can bring out different ways of playing that shock his players. But he adapted quickly. He had to just sit, be calm, and adapt to the way Daniil was playing and do something different. All I'm trying to say when I bring up this tennis stuff is, for me, when I'm out there trying to play tennis and get better at it, and I confront my own limitations, it helps me bring that back into my practice of agility in general. Saying in business, still, am I adapting fast enough? Am I reflecting enough so that I can adapt when needed? But what I'm trying to tell you is that this definition of agility is what's driving me, not the methods in Kanban or the methods in Scrum or the methods in Crystal and so on. It's not that anymore. It's these words: quickness. And again, you have to understand the words. My whole book gets into the fact that there's something called rushing and hurrying, and it is not the same as being quick. Very, very different words. So this has been transformational for me. The fact that this silly little dictionary, Merriam-Webster, had for me this secret to what I view as the definition of agility and this pathway towards becoming more and more and more agile. And again, it's, Djokovic changed his whole entire approach when he changed his diet. 10, 12, 15 years ago, he realized he needed to be gluten-free, and he got way better. There's no agile playbook that says you should be gluten-free to be a great tennis player. It was working for him. But ultimately, if you look at the player, you say, are they agile or not? By saying, are they quick, resourceful, and adaptable? Do they move with quick, easy grace? That's that proof that you're agile. How you get there, there's a myriad ways to get there. But the destination is clear. It must have those three words in it, whether it's the first or second definition. So maybe I'm challenging your thinking quite a bit. I don't know. But, that's where I've gone to in all the many years. And I've been involved in the agile, stuff since the 90s. Thoughts, comments, questions?
It's actually very thought-provoking, so thank you.
Great.
Maybe that's kind of a subconscious and conscious thing we have to ask ourselves as we're deep into a transformation or using Agile, is to ask ourselves regularly, are we quick? Are we adaptable? And so on. So that, if we answer no to any of those questions, we know we have a place to work. How are we going to do it? We're not adaptable. How do we get there? So it's a kind of a checks and balances thing to keep asking yourself.
Yeah, that's right. I definitely agree with that. Yeah. There's a principle in the manifesto for Agile software development. It says, maximize the amount of work not done. So if you can produce a result where you were able to get rid of a bunch of work and not even do it, and instead end up delivering that result much sooner, quicker, there may be elements of agility present because you were able to maximize the amount of work you didn't do. There's all kinds of ways to get there, right? I am always looking for ways that I can be quicker, more at ease, or doing things that are easy and more graceful. Graceful is a funny word. If you look into it, it has a lot of definitions. But the one that is really, I think, relevant to the word agile is the grace, which means grace is related to being supple, that you can gracefully handle bumps in the road or unexpected things. It's very much related to supple, which is related to being, it's anything that's supple can handle different kinds of pressures or things like that. And it's supple is very closely related to the word adaptive. So really the word graceful means to be adaptable. They're very, very similar words. You're graceful, you're also adaptable. You can adapt gracefully to situations. And I've found that this opens the umbrella even bigger. We talked about an umbrella of agile methods. To me, agile as the adjective opens the umbrella way, way, way bigger, right? And I begin to think about, well, how agile is my doctor? How agile is a lawyer? How agile is, a politician or someone, agility is this wonderful thing that isn't in this box that we've been in, which is thinking of it as just a noun or thinking of it as just a method. That's a very narrow way of looking at it. And I think the next evolution of Agile is seeing it as what it really is, agility. It's something that's been around forever, right? People have been Agile forever. And it takes a lot of work to really be Agile, to really be quick without rushing or hurrying, right? And to be adaptable and resourceful. There's been, so let me any other further comments before I go on? Okay.
So,
Yes.
it sounds to me like you're saying one method or one thing somebody might do as part of becoming agile would be automation or test-driven development or something. But that it's not those aren't required as part of Scrum or as part of Agile as a noun. And you could get to agility as an adjective in other ways.
Right.
Possibly.
Yes. Many, many other ways. The ultimate question is was it really agile? Let's say you got the result you wanted. HP at one point, and this is public knowledge, it's in a book and stuff, and they've talked about it. They had a new printer as part of a series of printers, and they made 2 million lines of code for the firmware for the printer, right? They had to write 2 million lines of code. Okay, great. It's a brand new kind of printer. We never made one like this before. 2 million lines of firmware. We shipped it. Everything was great. But then they got a second printer, which was slightly different than the first printer. And it had a few more bells and whistles and stuff, whatever. That was the point where they took the 2 million lines of code from the first printer, and they could have adapted it to work with the first and the second printers. Instead, they took the 2 million lines of code, they duplicated them, and they made the change for the second printer and put the driver code in there. Then they did that about 16 more times. So they had a total of 18 new printers, all of which had their own 2 million lines of printer driver code, all slightly different. So now you have 36 million lines of firmware across 18 printers. And anytime there was a defect, some miserable old developer had to go fixing it in 18 code bases. It was a total disaster and a black eye for HP. And after all that debacle happened, they created something called Future Smart firmware, which was very well named, Future Smart. And they realized that at the time, every project manager for every printer was just gunning to get the quick and easy solution, get it out the door. But it wasn't graceful. There was no portfolio management looking at the health of the entire ecosystem, right? So they had quick and easy, but they didn't have graceful. So you could say, well, it seemed like a victory because we were, and we were selling those printers. But it really wasn't in the long haul. It wasn't graceful at all, and it hurt the company. So really, the judgment of agility can take time sometimes to know. In a tennis match, it's a little bit clearer. Did they win or lose? In the business setting, it could take a little bit longer sometimes to know ultimately was that true agility or not. So let me go for a couple more things here. So I want to honor the time. So this quick, resourceful, and adaptable, right? So agile is not a noun. Be really, really careful and catch yourself thinking about it as a noun, right? It's not, to me, the correct way to think about agility. It is simply not correct. And it's not me telling you it's not correct, it's the dictionary telling you it's not correct. It is an adjective. I wrote a whole book about this. I ended up writing my favorite stories of agility to illustrate those 6 words: quick, easy, graceful, quick, resourceful, and adaptable. And it turned into a book of stories, and I had to organize the stories. I had no idea how to organize them until I started working on that, and out popped 6 things. Be quick, but don't hurry. Be balanced and graceful. Be poised to adapt. Start minimal and evolve. Drive out fear, and be readily resourceful. These were the 6 mantras that sort of came out of organizing those stories in the book. And now they're very meaningful to me, these mantras. These mantras help me stay focused on agility. And they're not easy. They're not easy. No mantra is easy. You may be familiar with this change curve. Virginia Satir was a famous family therapist and said that all major change really goes through this curve from the old status quo to the new status quo. And I think we're going through this, especially in the agile field, right? With people thinking it's the death of agile. It's a difficult time for many. And, I've used this particular curve for years and years and years now to help navigate change. At one time, I used it with a large organization that we were helping to implement some agile methods. And that was a 500-person group. All of them were going to go and start to practice some agile software methods together, all 500 at once. We started the engagement with a kickoff meeting, and I described this curve, showed it to them, and said, you're going to go through this. It's going to feel this way. And, they just listened and, whatever. But a couple of months later, a lot of people were going to the CTO and saying, I don't know what these people are talking about. They're saying I should do this and do that and integrate my code early. And, we typically don't integrate code until 7 or 8 months into the project, but they're asking me to do it in the first 3 weeks and all this stuff. And it's crazy. And the CTO was delighted because the CTO is now getting complaints, the right kind of complaints. And basically, a couple of months into the engagement, people came to the office one day and they saw this. The CTO had basically ordered there to be balloons throughout the entire office. This is in the suburbs of Boston. And everyone was like, what the heck are all these balloons for? And then the CTO finally sent out a message to everyone saying, congratulations, folks, we are in chaos. This is exactly where we wanted to be. And we are going to integrate and practice and get to our new status quo. And they did. And it was a fantastic example to me of embracing change and being really clear about what they were going for. And celebrating the fact that real change does require a lot of times this kind of a curve. I think this is a great book. The Obstacle is the Way. And it's something that Ryan Holiday wrote. He's written a lot about Stoicism, but I believe it's a very interesting, and it's a short read. It's easy to read. It's if you think that this agile is dead, is an obstacle, if you think that this change in the marketplace is an obstacle, or you're dealing with any kind of major obstacle in your life or business, then I would recommend you read the book, because you can look at this the way Patrick Mouratoglou looks at losses from his clients, right? The young 19-year-old Dane who wants to be the next Novak Djokovic. When he loses, he's finally a little open-minded to getting the kind of feedback he needs to really hear to make a change. A lot of times, the obstacle is the way. This change that we've seen in the agile industry, I believe, is a great place for us to triumph. It's a great way for us to look forward to the future and see what the future of agility can be. So this being poised to adapt is something that I'm trying to be better at. I mentioned the tennis. If I can't adapt quickly, then I'm not agile. And so I have to reflect, am I able to adapt quickly or not? If I am not playing well out there, can I change my game up? Can I try totally different approaches? What could I do differently? How can I adapt to the situation? And that's practice for agility in real life. Being poised, by the way, is an interesting definition because it means marked by balance or equilibrium, or having a graceful and elegant bearing. So these words kind of intertwine, right? Quick, easy, grace, being poised to adapt. You're graceful in your ability to adapt. This was the Dane's mother telling her son, this guy, Holger Rune, Novak actually said, great champions are the ones that are fastest to adapt. This is from the Netflix series Breakpoint. She was telling her son that this is what Novak had said. Great champions are the ones that are fastest to adapt. And I believe that is ultimately what we do see with really, really agile people, is that they are able to adapt really quickly. This does not say anything about the nature of what they're doing, right? So, it's anyone can be agile, right? And let me just say this, I hate to say it, but a terrorist can be agile, right? Agile does not discriminate in terms of is it a good or a bad thing that they're doing? It's were they quick, resourceful, and adaptable? They might have done something horrible, or they might have done something amazing. I don't actually even think it always means something good. It is just an adjective. It's a humble adjective, right? And you can apply it any old way you want. So to me, it's a little different from saying we have this perfect workplace that we love. Everyone wants that, but that's not necessarily what agile means. It's something that's terrific to go for. You want a wonderful environment, a wonderful supportive, teammates, wonderful managers and executives. But are you agile? Are you holding yourself accountable to those words and to what that really means? To me, that's what real agility is. Yeah, Adam.
Yeah, if I can just riff on that just a little bit, because it sounds to me, if I can riff off the tennis background, because when you're teaching tennis, I'm sure that there's some fundamentals that are incredibly resourceful, and there's a lot of very precise structure of this is how you follow through, this is this is how you position yourself, and I think sometimes we kind of lose the forest of the trees with agile methodologies where it's this is agile and this is not. We love our rules, we love our fundamental, or we love our it's like playing the scales on the piano, but and the more that we practice and the more that we pick up new tools and new principles, that is what allows us to get to that ability to be adaptive, be responsive to the situation that is at hand. A person who has no formal training struggles to really pinpoint how can I be adaptive in this situation. What else? What resources can I lean upon? What skills, tactics, strategies, etc. Because their toolbox is empty. Whereas once you've kind of gone through some of those fundamentals, you now have a rich toolbox that you can pull from, and you can respond to that by saying, "Hey, this didn't work over here with this group of people. Now it's time to be adaptive and be responsive to what's in front of me." In the same way that those world-class tennis players can be super responsive because they've got a deep toolbox of different practices that they can lean on, and they can say, okay, I tried this, it's not working, let's move, let's pivot.
Right. And they have to be willing to let go of some of the practices they learned early on too that may be holding them back. Pete Sampras, learned with a two-handed backhand. And when he was a junior, one of his coaches said, look, you'll never be a Grand Slam champion if you don't switch to a one-handed backhand. And, Pete had the strength to make that change, not the physical strength, but the mental strength to do that, because he lost a lot when he switched to the one-handed backhand. He lost to people that he used to beat easily. And everyone was feeling sorry for Pete Sampras because suddenly his game went down. He went into chaos. And he had to integrate and work really hard to get out of it. But when he emerged out of it, 2 years later, he was a absolute force to be reckoned with. No one could compete with him anymore. I mean, but he was able to go through that change. I dropped using sprints after about 7 or 8 years. I dropped sprints in around 2008. And I've written about it. It's in my book too. It's called The Day we stopped sprinting. And that was a kind of a marvel. I thought at one point, I thought iterations or sprints were like the keys, like the scales that you mentioned earlier, Adam. I thought it was basic part of agility. It really turned out it wasn't. And I had to be able to let that go. I've had to let a lot of things go. Story points, right? We can talk about those. You haven't used them in forever. But I'm constantly looking at ways to become more and more agile. And how I get there I'm not so attached to things anymore, right? They have to provide tremendous value in making me live those 3 words, like quick, easy, grace, or quick, resourceful, adaptable. And if I find something better, everyone's playing with AI these days. Well, how can AI help me get there if it can, or maybe not? It's keeping an open mind in terms of constantly experimenting and trying better ways to become more and more agile.
Love it.
While we're thinking about more questions, sorry, Walter, I'll just quickly launch our poll to get your feedback for the event. And definitely, the more the merrier questions. Interesting conversation, Joshua. Go ahead, Walker.
I mean, so this reminds me a lot of the difference between doing agile and being agile. And you have this interesting, going back to the definition to just, am I being agile? And the methodologies, try to simplify that by getting us there by doing it or practicing it within certain rules. And it's easier to create a shared understanding that way and get some semblance of traction. And then sort of when we were talking about sort of the great work environment that we are hoping for, they seem very closely connected to me, in modern agile, psychological safety. Like, how can I stay graceful when I'm not feeling safe? Or, how do I not fall into a hurry when there's a great sense of urgency being generated, organizationally or through management and forced deadlines? Or so this is the environment, or those environmental aspects are a little bit more than just, yeah, incidental or kind of pipe dreams. They are closely connected to our ability as humans, yeah, to stay connected to those adjectives.
Yes, yes. And I would just say, like, there were people who would say, like, when the Agile conference started having sessions on, you know, I don't know, healthy eating or whatever, they'd be like, oh my God, it's gone so far away from software development. They have these crazy topics now, but really it's all fair game for what helps you be agile, right? It really, I don't judge any of it. It's hey, they say these days sleep is so utterly important, right? If you're not getting enough sleep, you may not be as agile as you hope to be. And that could be a big element for you. Again, with Novak Djokovic, he changed his entire diet. He's pretty much a vegan and has been for many, many years. And it's helped him enormously. He's talked about that, right? He doesn't use the term vegan, but his diet helped him tremendously, right? You say that's unrelated to tennis. Well, it's related for him. It's what gets him the results. So there's no one formula for being agile. There is no one method. It's really, but ultimately you have to know what your destination is. And the best players are these ones that adapt the fastest. That's what Novak said. As a champion, he can see it. Because he said, and no, another famous quote is, everyone has great strokes. By the time you get to a professional level and you're playing in the Grand Slams, everyone has great strokes. A lot of it's the mental toughness and that psychological ability to handle adversity and maneuver and adapt quickly in a situation that's difficult. That's what really is makes you agile. In business, I've had to deal with all kinds of difficulties running a company and obstacles, right? And how can I be agile in those situations? How can I adapt faster? How can I adapt more gracefully? How can I be resourceful? That's what I find gives me great joy, right? Is endeavoring to be more agile. And that's why I called the book Joy of Agility and filled it with my favorite stories of people that exemplify, that kind of way of being. Other thoughts, comments, questions? Yeah, Adam.
Yeah, just another thought, because I do like what you said about it being a Venn diagram, and you have to have all three. It's easy to move fast. It's sometimes easy to move fast and graceful, or fast and graceful. But like, if it's a brute force, like against everyone's will, there's room for improvement.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's and that word with ease, I often add it to a lot of the things that our team does. It's like, hey, how could we do this with ease? Yeah, we brute forced it, and bravo. But like, what if it were easier? What if we enjoyed it a lot more? And bringing that to it, because yeah, I think by default, a lot of people tend to brute force a lot of different things, and that yeah. So I love that trifecta of, all right, yeah, we can move fast and we can be graceful, but like, how do we do it with ease as well? That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Merriam-Webster, and it's it doesn't tell you how necessarily. So it's like, how do you get that ease, right? You have to reflect. You have to think about it. You gotta, work on it and maybe read some books or take some courses or learn some techniques that are going to help you, become more quick, easy, and graceful. But without knowing what you're going for, it's really hard. There's one thing I didn't mention that, so this one of the mantras is be quick, but don't hurry. And one of the hardest things to do in tennis, it's something my grandfather would tell me when I played um, baseball, which he would say to me is keep your eye on the ball. And in tennis, when you're about to hit the ball, most players take their eye off the ball and they look at where they're going to try to hit it to. They're rushing and hurrying to see that they got the result they wanted, that they hit it to the right spot. And every time you do that, your head looks up And when your head looks up, your racket face looks up and the ball goes flying or it doesn't go where you want it to go. By staying completely focused on that ball when you're hitting it and trusting it's going to go in the right place, that's how you start to develop a very, very good stroke. That level of discipline is extremely hard. I can do it for we start hitting, and for the first 2 or 3 shots, I've done it. I'm really looking at the ball. And then by the 4th or 5th, when I'm running around the court, I lost it. Now I'm looking at where I'm about to hit it, and I don't hit it as well. And I bring it up because for me, that's a way for me to practice not hurrying and rushing. When I start to hurry and rush and I start to like take my eye off the ball, I'm not as good of a player, right? And so I can bring that back into business and other situations and go, where am I rushing and hurrying in business, and how is that hurting my game, or how is that hurting my performance? I found a lot of traction from just noodling on these words and trying to get better and better at them.